Do we want to move on to the next topic then?
Let's do it. Might as well just wrap this up.
Sure. Last topic, obviously, we've kind of hinted at it already. The past 9 days have been very interesting.
Well, it kind of goes into the CPT conversation.
The CPT conversation. So it was interesting because obviously, it relating to the world, I was thinking about all the context, how it would reflect the world. The immigration ban that was the executive order for the immigration ban.
Yeah.
And I hadn't thought about its impact on the Capcom Pro Tour or the FGC at all until I saw Phenom's tweet, and he's like, "If this stays, my CPT is done."
Yeah.
Because he cannot come into the United States anymore.
Right. Yeah. I don't know where it is that he's a national of, but do you guys know what country?
He mentioned it. I forgot which one it was.
Phenom? I don't know. I mean, he lives in Norway now, but
right.
So I'm not sure where he's from originally.
Yeah.
In any case, so the rule, if you don't know, is that refugees are banned for, I forget which one is 120 days or 90, but refugees are banned for, I think, 120 days.
People are saying he's from Iran.
He's from Iran.
Okay. Iran, okay, there you go. Yeah, and people entirely from 7 different countries, including Iran and 6 others, are banned from entry for 90 days. I think it's 90 and 120.
Yeah.
Or it's the other way around. Anyway, the result of that is that people who are, like him, I guess, from Iran, they can't come in, so there's at least one impact in terms of the immediateness.
Right.
But on top of that, there might be secondary consequences of countries not liking the fact that the U.S. is restricting travel in this way, because that's considered a really important part of like the modern foundations of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of...
So countries are considering or like floating the balloons of maybe not allowing travel to or from the U.S. either.
Yeah, right. Iran was one of the first ones that said
Iran
that,
was,
I think, right? Yeah, they were like, you can't come over
here. I don't know. I mean, as far as Hamad, for example, so Hamad is from Kuwait, and there are other people from Kuwait. Kuwait is not one of the 7 countries that has been banned, but the fact that there is a ban that's like clearly in its genesis a Muslim ban is probably not thrilling them.
Yeah,
I would think
sure.
they're probably not stoked about that. So
we're not stoked either. So
we're not stoked either. Yeah, but for sure, I'm sure they're not stoked about it. We've had close relations with Kuwait for a long time as a country, but I don't know what changes there could be because there have been such drastic changes in only a couple of weeks. So who knows what could happen for people in Kuwait or like other countries. It's impossible to have any like certainty about how politics and legality of things is going to be going forward.
Right. So like, in terms of fighting game, if somebody basically for anybody who's not from the U.S. wants to come to a U.S. event, like booking your flight is kind of worrisome because what happens if your country turns out to like be one of the banned countries a month or 2 from now or something, right?
Right, exactly.
It could be instant.
It could be instant.
That's
like
what
you could
happened
literally,
to a lot of people.
You could be in the airplane flying to the U.S.
Yeah.
And when you land, you could find the news that you can't come in.
Mm-hmm.
You're banned.
You got to fly back. You got to go back to wherever.
That sucks, dude.
Yeah, it super sucks. And then on top of that, they're considering making changes to the traveling situation such that if people come in from other countries, the U.S. can like search through their social media and look into like all these other.
Right. Yeah.
So that means you have to change your flight when you're going to come in. That means you're not going to probably be able to stay as long. You have to travel longer. You have to take more time off.
I mean, I wouldn't want to go to a country where they're going to like search through my social media records. I just wouldn't go.
I wouldn't go either.
I just wouldn't make the trip. So, and I wouldn't at all. If that does happen, I wouldn't at all blame people who didn't come.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I wouldn't do it. Why would I expect other people to do that? So.
You know what you blame? Commander in Queef. Piece of crap. Anyways, go ahead. I'm sorry. That was just had to...
No. You got to do what you got to do, man.
Yeah, the Emperor, Supreme Emperor.
You got to do what you got to do. Yeah, it's a weird situation for sure. So, jokingly, probably, Lapsheet had a tweet that was like, hey, we should have Capcom Cup in Canada instead. Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if none of the players, or if there's like a number of the players that can't actually come from a lot of the countries, then like, how are you going to have it in the U.S.?
Right, yeah.
They just can't come in.
Right, yeah. Or if they like on principled grounds, or just like, I don't want my privacy to be so blown up grounds, don't want to come into the country.
Right.
I get that. I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't want to do that myself.
Yeah, so anybody traveling here, it's super scary, like, especially since a lot of the stuff's been happening at LAX. So it's
there were people detained there.
Right. So even to me, like, I don't even know if I want to travel out of the U.S.
Yeah, it's like
Just
worrying
because,
for
like,
us as
it's
U.S.
really
citizens.
Yeah, I'm
scary,
I'm a
yeah.
U.S. citizen, but like, what happens if I go somewhere and I come back and they're like, "Where were you?"
Yeah, why-
Turns out while you were there, like, we just decided you're not allowed to come back from there.
Why
'cause-
were you in X or Y place?
Yeah.
What were you doing there
Mhm.
in X or Y place? Why don't we check out your social media feeds on your way back? I mean, the law at the border is very sparse. Like
Yes.
normal constitutional stuff doesn't really apply when it comes to the border in a lot of situations. So things that would be like illegal, unreasonable searches and seizures, if they happened like here, are fine at the border. So like for example,
So you're talking about like Canada border, like
yeah, like when you come back, even for us as U.S. citizens coming back into the U.S.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like for example, if I were to bring my little tablet guy here, which I always do, as I come back in, they can validly, legally search that. They can just be like, "We want to see your thing." They can do that. They very rarely do that.
Right.
Who knows if it becomes more commonplace? I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like I can't bet
Yeah,
in
you
the
don't
same
want to
kind of
gamble.
way. You know what I
You
mean?
don't
Like
want
I
to
can't.
gamble.
It's tough now.
It's really scary. I mean, for all of us, especially like even first off, just the people like you said before that's traveling in and out of the United States, and then for people who want to just go like for working.
So are we gonna have less people from foreign countries at Evo this year?
Yeah.
Right. Just
If
because
this
a lot of
sticks,
people
I feel
come
like
to
it's
watch,
easy.
I mean,
right?
there are
Yeah.
at least 7 countries that can't be represented. But yeah, I mean, on top of that, well, I guess we'll see because at that point the ban's probably not going to still be in place. But just sort of like the feeling of the ban
Right.
creates a negative perception of America,
Very negative
which
perception.
I get because I kind of feel the same way. I wouldn't be surprised if people didn't want to come.
I mean, I was looking at a Facebook thing about them talking about it in court in England, I believe. And like they were saying, it was like, hey, it's up to the United States if they want to do it. But just like David said, like somebody right after that say, hey, we understand that, but then why should we accommodate them if no one wants to accommodate us? It's not that they only don't want to accommodate us, but we could just cut ties with them altogether. Those are things that people are saying. Those are natural conversations that happen.
Sure.
And we, being the fighting game community, a very small portion of any of that travel anyway.
Yeah.
But just the fact that it infringes on the fact that people want to come and enjoy themselves and do something that has nothing to do politically or religiously to what they're there to do.
Dude,
Come on.
some of the people who are barred from even coming to the country were here to like do research and like teach or like be part of this
Student
really
visas and
crucial.
all sorts of stuff.
You know, some of these people were going to be very, very significant contributing members to science and to society and stuff like that.
Definitely true.
It's yeah.
It's a very weird time. It feels like you can't. The certainty is not there in the law.
And I mean, it's very clear, obviously. So we're in SoCal, so we're all going to be more on the liberal side of things, right? And so it's just everything that's just been going on in the past 9 days. Like I said, it's crazy how slow these days have been going by. You know what I mean? Because like every morning I wake up and it's like he couldn't have just been president like
he's been
9
moving
days
quickly.
ago. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't feel like that's the case.
How many executive orders has he signed? Like 9 or something like that?
Quite a bit. I mean, it's not uncommon to have a president sign a lot of executive orders coming in, but it's more like the kind of executive orders that he's signed are like very they really disrupt things in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like for example, the idea that the U.S. would not. This is kind of as an aside. That the U.S. wouldn't honor the privacy requirements from the European Union. So that's a problem for tech companies because if a tech company from the U.S. wants to do business in the European Union, they have to abide by the privacy laws that are in there.
Right.
And privacy laws that we have in the U.S. are very sparse. So now the question is, will the European Union continue to allow tech companies to work to like have sales, to sell things, to work there? I don't know. But that's just like one of these like very weird situations, you know what I mean? Like it's the lack of certainty is
Yeah, those kind of questions
tough,
are
dude.
things that you don't want to leave up in the air, especially when one of your profession is probably traveling. Like, what if you need to? What if that's one of the things that leaving out of this country is something that you do for a living in some cases? I know people that like work for Google who travel all over the world, and they might not be born in the United States.
right.
What happens then? all because they do this ban now, all of a sudden, who's had a clean record the entire time, can't get back into the country because, like you said, once you get to the border to get back in, you can definitely get tied up and lost in the system, especially if you're in another country. And that's not including being able to contact people because you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, who knows what... That's the thing, right? Like you mentioned, like, who knows what's going to happen? Like, we're talking about being a little worried about traveling, and we're all U.S. citizens.
Right.
Like, so imagine if you're not. Like, it's got to be super terrifying to go anywhere, right? Like, outside the country and come back. It's like, who knows if you'll get let in? Like, you have a job and family and work and all this stuff, and you just can't come back into the U.S.
I mean, at first, people who have green cards were not allowed to come in, but they changed that after so many protests.
Green cards away from some people.
But they did also at the border have people sign documents that they didn't really clearly explain, and some of those did give up the right to travel in the U.S. for like 5 years or something crazy. So there's a lawsuit about that, or there's going to be a lawsuit about that now. But yeah, that's shady. You know?
Yeah, it like I said, it doesn't sit right with a lot of people, and I feel like the fact that like we have to talk about it or even slightly can touch on it to the fact that it does affect just this small thing is something that's it's very disconcerting. It's so scary to be in this situation, not just for me, but for other people. I mean, it's one of those things that you do have to take a look at, and you have to apply it to how it's going to affect you. I personally feel like anyway. That's just me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, clearly, Buddha Locke, who doesn't vote because it doesn't really matter. I mean, Trump is president because he effectively won 60,000 more votes than Clinton did in 3 important states that gave him the Electoral College, and there would not be a travel ban if anybody else had been elected, not just if it wasn't Trump. Right. If it was like any of the other Republicans had won, there wouldn't have been a travel ban. Like if any Democrat had won. So yeah, things could easily have been different, but I think it was like 52% of people who can vote did not vote.
Yeah.
It's a lot of folks. That really could have changed things.
I mean, it's a frustrating thing because like I registered to vote this year specifically because I wanted to put my voice out there, but we're in California, like it's.
Yeah.
Well, we've seen some of the stances that like the government in California have effectively taken to say that they are not with.
Right, but I mean, my point being is just that it's frustrating because I can register to vote, but I'm literally, I feel like in a way I'm not going to make a difference.
Yeah, in terms of the presidential election, you probably won't.
Right.
Which sucks. It's not a good system for sure, but still, I mean, it's important for sending messages if, because the percentage matters too. Like if Trump had won the electoral vote, that would have been a different situation than the fact that he lost it by 3 million or whatever it is. Like in terms of how much of your agenda you can get done effectively,
right.
that really has an impact. So your vote is not wasted because it was part of the fact that Trump did win the electoral or the popular vote.
I mean, someone in the chat says that they live in Texas. They have the same problem.
Yeah, but again, I mean, those numbers matter. Like if no people had voted for Clinton in Texas, and if, then again, that 3 million vote tally would be very different, or he would have had the popular vote win, and that is a very different situation politically than how it currently is. So it really matters.
Okay, well, unfortunately, I mean, it can. I mean, like obviously the FGC is the least of the problem.
Of course,
we're a minor thing, but it's emblematic of things that are going on. Like we're not the only community having this talk right now. Right. Anybody, any community,
every community is.
Anything that requires international travel is having this kind of talk for sure.
Yeah, one of the Dota players from EG was from one of the countries that was banned, and he's like in the U.S. now, and it's like, so he was like, there was like an issue with that. I remember reading something about it on Twitter.
Can he go visit his family and come back?
Can he travel internationally
Probably
to an event?
Can he even go to events? Yeah, right.
Yeah, like I mean, a lot of the Dota events are in like other, like completely other countries, right? So it's like,
can he Korea, go to Japan?
Yeah, can he go to all these other places? Can he go to like a Russia major and come back? Like, can he do that?
I mean, like it's even in like racing, like foot racing, you know what I mean? Marathons is something that people I'm close to really follow closely. And now a lot of people who are very strong runners can't come to the U.S. and to like do stuff as they normally would because, they're from those 7 countries or whatever.
Yeah.
Or they're just worried about the potential future.
I mean,
so it's not just us, it's everybody.
I
You
mean,
have to
even
take
the
those things
process
into account.
even getting the process of getting a green card or a visa is like really hard.
Yeah.
It's
It
not
takes
even just,
years.
So to have
Right,
somebody
it's not
say
even just like-
no go, come on,
I
man.
know it's
It's
not.
just politics,
it's
dude.
Just, it's
Yeah.
so hard. To
And the
already-
7 countries that were banned haven't. Nobody from there has attacked the U.S. in 40 years or something.
Well,
those
they
are
said-
not
yeah,
countries that have actively caused terror in the U.S.
Right, and of course, none of those countries are countries where Trump has any businesses.
That's also true. I mean, the list was created under Obama as
Yeah, it
like
was.
7 countries that are like potentially
Okay.
dangerous, but they've never done anything.
Mm.
By the way,
Yeah.
a white Canadian dude terrorized Muslims this past weekend. He murdered 6 people. He was a white Christian guy
And they
in Quebec.
first reported him as being Muslim, right?
They did. But the point is just that terror is not about one religion or
Yeah,
Definitely
of course.
Yeah.
obviously it's
Yeah.
completely absurd to think that. So.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, definitely a heavy thing to even talk about. I mean, like
Yeah.
I said before,
Yeah.
that we're a small
He was a Trump supporter also,
fraction.
it's true.
You know what I'm saying? Like we're a small fraction of who this affects. You know, but
Yeah.
but it affects us.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it's good for us to be able to talk about it from that perspective, because then it just shows that like these decisions like this have such like avalanche of effect all
For
over
sure,
the place.
man.
It's
Law is
definitely a
very
snowball
important.
effect.
Yeah. And very easily
Snowball
changed.
effect,
Like,
yeah.
don't think of law as being something that persists and is just like immovable.
Right.
Not true at all. It is constantly changing and it changes easily. All it needs is a few people who have enough power and they can change it super drastically.
all it
Super
takes is a
drastically.
pen.
They could
Yeah.
ban anime
Yeah.
from the country if they wanted.
I would leave instantly. I'm telling you right now. I can't watch anime. I'm buying a ticket right now.
but real talk, anime is better protected than the ability of people to enter the U.S.
Yeah.
There are more protections on that than immigration. So, I mean, the law in a lot of different ways can change super easily. It really requires that people, like, actively be involved, and you got to actively do things. You can't just sit around and expect
Yeah.
it to stay the same, because it won't. It won't.
But
Okay.
hopefully, guys like Phenom will be able to continue to play
I hope
and
so,
stuff
man.
like that, because that guy's super young, so much potential.
Yeah.
Obviously, was one of the strongest players last year.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the year, I can
Yeah.
imagine this year he's going to be doing damage all year long.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if, like, he can't come to final round, right? And, like, in an alternate timeline where he could come to final round, he would have won the event and got sponsored and been a pro player the rest of his life. But now, will not, because he can't come to the U.S.
That is a plausible scenario.
totally a possible timeline.
Ow.
He gets a $40 million contract from EchoFox, and he's a lifelong player, and he ends up,
Dude,
being
he should-
going
he
into the
should-
greatest of all time. And
Well, if you're
that's
if
the
you're an
alternate
esports
timeline.
team right now, many of them are based in the U.S., but not all of them are. What do your choices about who to sponsor are
Right.
like very much impacted by this. If you're from the U.S., if you're a team in the U.S., do you sponsor somebody who's from outside of the U.S.?
Right.
Like, is
That's
that
the thing, is you
is that a sound business decision?
It
Because you
probably
can't
changes
count on
your
it.
decision.
Yeah, there's no
Uh,
certainty, so you can't count on it in the same way.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, alrighty,
All right. So that's that.
that's all. We'll keep an eye on this.